Well, hello, and as promised, welcome to part two of this week's photography Pubcast with Stuart McGlennon. Enjoy. So moving on from that, we're going to change tack here and completely talk about something completely different. And this is one of Dave's suggestions actually. And Dave, you were talking about computer games, and do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, it's just something that we've never talked about, even when we've actually got together and what have you. And I don't know why it sprung to mind. I think I do actually. I got some Gamer Muppet suggestion on my YouTube feed, and I thought, well, why would I be interested in this sort of thing? But a few years ago, I probably would have been. I started my interest in that sort of thing starts in the late 70s when Sinclair brought out a calculator that you could program. So you could, the Sinclair Cambridge program, and it was a precursor of the ZX80.
Ooh, yes.
And I had one of those because I couldn't afford the Texas Instruments scientific programmable calculator, which was way too much pocket money. But when the ZX80 came out, I saved up for it. By the time I got enough money, it had been superseded by the 81, so I bought that instead.
Yeah. That's it, yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
And then I bought the Spectrum, of course, with the rubber keys. So the first game that I ever played that was, you go out and you buy a cassette and you load it up and it makes a screechy noise as it's loading, and it takes about 20 minutes to load, and then it promptly crashes, was The Hobbit. And it was, you are in a room. Do you go north or south? And you click N for north, and you go north, and then it goes, you have died. You have been eaten by a spider. It was like, oh, okay then. But I thought it was brilliant. So I got right into computer gaming, and I remember as a proper fully fledged adult wasting hours on Doom when they got into first person shooters. I remember Duke Wolfenstein came out, and that was it was really blocky, 8-bit graphics. It was terrible. But when Doom came out, it was a whole paradigm shift, and it was the first genuine smooth scrolling first person shooter. And I absolutely loved that and all that sort of thing. But I actually stopped playing, completely stopped about 25 years ago. I got to a point where I thought, well, I'm racking up all these points, get loads of points. I remember I played the first Grand Theft Auto when it was a top down.
That's right.
And so I just one day I thought to myself, I spend all this time earning points or virtual money. I should be doing that with real life. I should be earning proper money. If I can do it in a game, why can't I do it for real? So that's what I did.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you were to set up a YouTube channel, a gaming YouTube channel,
Millions.
then you would be earning a lot more money than we would be doing landscape photography on YouTube. That's for sure.
So I just wonder what your memories were, what your fond look-backs are, or if you still play.
Three things I remember about having a Spectrum, because I remember my friend had a ZX81. And it was ZX81 was black and white. Do you remember? It was only black and white, and the keys weren't even rubber keys. It was like a pad that you just like a touchpad almost. But I remember getting a Spectrum, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. But the three things I remember about it was one, you had to. None of my stuff would load unless I had it at a specific volume. So on the tape deck, so I used Ghetto. Do you remember Ghetto Blasters, right? Because we're talking 83, 82, 83. And I had a Ghetto Blaster because, I was a cool kid at 11. And I had Tipex with little marks at what volume different things loaded. And I had to turn them to that volume, otherwise they just wouldn't load. And the second thing I remember about having a Spectrum, and this will tell you exactly how cool I am, I was playing it one day and I spilt my cup of soup over it, and it stopped working for about 3 weeks until it dried out. And that was tomato. It was tomato.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a tomato cup of soup. And the third thing I remember about it was you used to get these magazines that were called like I can't even remember what they were called, but they had programs in. Do you remember that? And you used to type the program in to make a game. And so you'd sit there all day, and this wasn't on the Spectrum. This was my we had an Auric. Do you remember an Auric? It was an Auric 1. It was like one that no one ever used. And we sat in typing this game all day long from this, like, you get like 4 or 5 pages, like 10, do this, like 20, go to 10, like the beep, blah, blah. Anyway, and it never worked. So we kept debugging it. And in the end, it was a cricket game. And in the end, we got it running. And my brother tripped over the lead and it come out in the power lead. And that was it. That was it all day for that. Absolute nightmare. But yeah, brilliant. Happy days.
I remember my first ever computer game was a bit like Dave back in the 70s, so mid 70s I think it was. I was bought one of the, I had to look this up today because I knew we were talking about this. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the brand. It was a Binatone TV game, so it was one of these things you plugged into your TV. It was black and white, and it had Pong. It's no, it was I found it online today, and I know it's a Binatone brand.
What do Binatone make now? Do they make other stuff now?
I got a feeling Binatone did audio stuff, didn't they? Didn't they do audio, Binatone? Did they do like...
Yeah, they did.
Do you remember the massive old like units that used to have like a record player on it? It looked like a cabinet. I'm sure that was a Binatone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was. I'd searched it today to try and find a picture of it because I could then remember it, and I found it. And it was like one of these things where, you're playing Pong, left and right tennis, and it was doubles tennis. But the thing I enjoyed most, it had skeet, and I had a separate gun that would obviously fire towards the TV, and it was so unreliable. Clearly it didn't get a lot of accuracy in it, but just the fact that I could fire a gun towards my television and shoot these fake clay pigeons that were popping out, it was fantastic. I got so much enjoyment out of that. I really did. I then moved on to before I had the kids, so my kids are now, 24 is the oldest and 20, but before they were born, I started to get back into RPGs, role-playing games and things like that. So I was into a game called Baldur's Gate many, many years ago. It was like a Dungeons and Dragons type thing. And I used to really enjoy, and actually when my oldest was born, in the first few years, I used to sort of play this game of Baldur's Gate, and he used to sit on my lap, and I used to play it with him, or show him, what I was doing. And it was now because it was on the PC. It wasn't on a console. It was actually on the PC, and it was one of those games that you had to go through different stages and you did different challenges, and it's so annoying because you get to a point where you have to, once you go inside some castle or whatever it is, if you didn't kill all the baddies, then you'd have to do the whole lot again and again and again until you did. And it's such a bloody annoying game. And I gave up in the end. But ironically, my lads now, that even at the age they are at 24 and 20, they're still playing role-playing games themselves, albeit now it's all online and they're all multiplayer role-player games with their mates and the rest of it. But it's obviously washed off on them. But yeah, that was so sort of the RPGs, the Oblivions, Final Fantasies, Dungeons and Dragons. That was where I started. Yeah, that's
Call of Duty now, isn't it? Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I think the best game I've ever played, computer game, was Half-Life. Did anybody ever play Half-Life?
Yes.
It scared the living shit out of me because back then, look, games weren't supposed to scare you. And I remember when you had that thing that used to jump on your face that looked like whatever, like a crab or whatever it was.
Normally pay good money for that sort of thing.
What did it say? Chico.
Oh, it scared the life out of me, that game did, and I played that for a while. But yeah, I still play. I play a lot of like sort of sports games now. I used to design.
I'm like that.
Oh yeah.
What do you play it on? PS
on my computer,
Xbox?
on my PC.
PS4.
Computer.
Yeah. I used to design golf courses. That was a real big thing for me. I love golf, and I used to go on. There was a game. Well, there was Tiger Woods, but there was a game. It's called PGA 2000, and I got quite good at designing golf courses for that. And there was a game that was released. Can't for the life of me remember what it was, but the guy who built the game, he asked me to design a course for the game when it was released. But I'm rubbish at that sort of thing. I never did it.
Are these PC?
Yeah, PC.
Games?
Yeah.
So the big one was it Lynx?
Lynx
LS or something?
Yeah, it was. You had Lynx.
Was that it?
You had Microsoft Lynx, and the other side of that was PGA Tiger Woods PGA Tour. So Lynx was Lynx was Microsoft, and the other one was EA Sports. And it was the guy from Lynx who was called Mike Jones, and he's actually doing something else. He's on another project now, but he asked me if I would design a golf course for an upcoming game. I think it was him. I hope it was him now, because I'm going to sound like an idiot if it wasn't. And I said, oh, yeah. And I couldn't get to grips with the new designer, so I kind of gave up on it, really. But, yeah.
I used to love that Lynx game because there was so many courses you could download.
Yeah.
I might be wrong here, but there was more on that game than you could for like Tiger Woods and whatever. Cause
Yeah.
presumably third-party developers were doing them on their own, and I used to love that game.
Yeah. You had a lot of user designed courses. They're all over the place. There's games out now that are similar, but I've lost my interest really now in that sort of thing. I still play the games, but I ain't got time to design anything. I do remember. I tell you, I do. I don't know if anyone else remembers, but anyone else ever played Championship Manager when it first came out? Did you play?
I lost half my university to that.
Well,
it was Championship Manager and then Football Manager.
Yeah, right.
But I lost a lot of time to that.
I remember my girlfriend had a PC and she brought it with her to university, and this would have been 96, I think 96.
Yeah.
And we were staying in halls, and she had the computer in her room, and I remember we got Championship Manager for it, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we uploaded it, and it was like great because it had, like, I'm a Peterborough fan, and it had like a picture of London Road on it. I was like, fucking, what's going on? Anyway, I started playing the game at 6 o'clock in the evening, and next time I looked up, it was like 7 o'clock next morning. And it genuinely was, and I just lost a whole like 12 hours playing it. I didn't know what had gone on. I was just like, okay, brilliant.
Does anybody remember a Minesweeper on Windows 3?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I cut my teeth with programming. I set myself a challenge to write a DOS version of it to operate exactly the same logic. You know, you click on a square, it'll tell you the numbers of what's around it and that sort of thing. And the company that I was working with at the time, there was a programmer there, a proper programmer by trade. So he debugged my code and explained how to lay it out and all that sort of thing. And this game worked. And at the time, the current Mrs. G at that point, I came home with a computer. She said, what the hell have you spent good money on that for? And I spent all these evenings, sweat pouring off me, tapping away, looking, like one of these lads that just lives on pizza in a basement. And I said to her, it'll pay for itself, trust me. Anyway, that marriage went down the toilet. But not long after that...
It cost you a lot of money in the end.
Yeah, it did. But it wasn't that long after that I ended up driving around in a Ferrari. So it did pay for itself.
Did the marriage end because she worked out the reason you were sitting in a basement sweating over a computer?
Yeah.
It hadn't been invented back then. You used to wait ages for a JPEG to download.
Come on.
We've all been there, don't lie.
Do you remember the early days of internet when it was dial-up? And you wanted to download a song, and the song would be like, it'd take you sort of 25 minutes, and then someone would phone up, and you'd like, oh, for fuck's sake, it's 78% downloaded, and I've got to start all over again.
Did you use like Napster and Rockster and all those?
LimeWire and
LimeWire, that was the other one, peer-to-peer stuff. Yeah. Everyone had a mate who would get it done faster.
Yeah.
My mate up the road was a bugger for that. He was the go-to guy for the copied stuff.
I remember. Do you remember? I've been back in the days of the Amiga, and is it the Amiga or the Atari ST? And you'd always have a friend who'd have like one of those disc boxes, like they were sort of because it was the little disc, wasn't it? The hard disc.
Yeah.
And he'd have like disc box full of copies, and he'd go, oh yeah, well, you want that one? Ooh, here, play that one. Oh, that's a good one. And he'd have like about 400 of these copied discs that he got. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. You're very quiet, Darren. Do you not do any of this?
No. I've played Tomb Raider about 25 years ago, and I bought Assassin's Creed about 10 years ago, and I'm halfway through that game.
I'm still doing it.
So perhaps another 10 years' time, I might even complete that disc. So,
good value for money then.
I think exactly, yeah.
You'd be able to buy a printer.
Yeah, no, I think I've played 2 games in the last 25. Well, 1.5 games in the last 25 years.
Do you ever play games online? So, like for instance, did you like there used to be I used to play
chess online.
Yeah, oh, do you? There was
Okay.
a game called play online and lose online. There was a game called I think it might have been Call of Duty, but no, there was Battlefield 3 or something it was, and I was like, right, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to give it a go online, and you'd spawn somewhere, and you'd be like about 5 minutes away from the action. So your character would spawn and you'd run all the way through. Well, this was my experience anyway. You'd run all the way through the streets with this character and you'd finally get to someone who's actually having a battle and they'd shoot you and you'd respawn 5 minutes away again and you just have to run back again. That was my experience. That I was so terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. So I stopped playing that after a while.
That's all my lads play now is these online games, and that's where society's changed for well, certainly with my kids anyway, and I know a lot of other kids where in our age we were going out on our bikes and causing trouble on the streets and the rest of it in real life. Yeah. Now they're just doing it all from their bedrooms. So they're all online and they're all on, I think it's Discord or something that they use, a sort of online chat type environment that they all talk together on, and then they play multiplayer games. And that's how they meet. So they're not going out down the fish shop and sitting outside and throwing stuff in the rivers and causing trouble. They're just online, just chatting and
sounds
playing
ridiculous. A group of people just chatting online all together. Wait a minute.
Well, I'll tell you what. Even though I don't play like the games, I know, and probably James Bellings is probably watching us tonight, and James Bellings has just got a PS5.
Oof! Look at him.
Wow. And Georgie, his wife, I'm friends with her on Facebook as well. And there was a picture of James opening up his PS5 with a big grinning face, and her post was, "It's the closest I've ever seen him to enthusiasm in 20 years. I include our wedding day in that assessment." And I thought, what a great post. And then further,
it is a PS5, to be fair.
yeah, and then further down the line, I think she was talking about him taking 7 hours to download whatever he needed to download. And she replied to someone saying, "I don't understand, but watching his sulky little face was hilarious."
Oh, it'll have been a Call of Duty update pack. That's what it'll have been.
Do you know what? Yeah, exactly that. Call of Duty. There we go. You know your games.
I wonder how he got it.
You buy the Call of Duty game and then it's 100 gigabyte of update before you can start the thing. It's
Really?
always the same. Yeah.
So do you play now then, Stuart?
No, I don't as much as I used to. I mean, this lockdown certainly. I actually sold my PS4, and then at the start of this lockdown, I just impulse buy, I guess, just because you're bored at home, and I went and got another PS4. But I play a bit of sort of online with the football. So there's obviously FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer. If you know your football, Pro Evolution Soccer is the sort of purist game, I suppose.
Yeah, the real one.
The real one, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
And FIFA's the more sort of arcadey type game, I suppose. So I play a bit of that to sort of pass the time, but the online element takes a bit of getting used to, because if you're our age and you're doing it to sort of just maybe relax and kill half an hour or something, but you get these people and they're just so wired. I'll play a game and I might say I win a game or something like, and they're straight in sending you a message, really abusive message about your tactics and you're an arsehole and all this sort of thing. And it's like, bloody hell. I only came on here for 10 minutes, just a bit of light relief.
I must admit, I've never owned a console of any sort ever. It completely passed me by. This is the thing. Mine goes back to PC games in the latest would be about mid-90s, something like that. But so all this modern stuff, I have no clue what it's about. That's why when YouTube said, "Would you be interested in this?" and I'm thinking, where the hell did you get that from? Their algorithm is shit.
We bought an Xbox One. So I've got my eldest daughter's 19. We bought an Xbox One and she used to play Grand Theft Auto on it all the time. But we had a FIFA like, I don't know, FIFA 20 or FIFA 19 or whatever. Yeah. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to have a go at this online. You pick a random game, don't you? You just put the games in and someone random comes up. And I was getting dicked about 6-1 after about 5 minutes, and I could hear some kid in the headphones going, "This guy's really shit. You're really shit, mate." And I'm like, what's going on? I actually quit the game. He sounded like an 11-year-old. And he was going, "Oh shit, mate, you're rubbish. You are." And I he was doing all these moves.
They get the headsets on, don't they?
Yeah. And it was.
I probably play 12 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I know.
Don't go to school.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to these days. You can just be an esports, like you got this whole esports thing, haven't you, where people win like hundreds of thousands of pounds for winning competitions. Yeah. Won't be me, I can tell you. It won't be me.
Well, you're shit.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
you know you are.
Yeah, I do know I am. Anyway, in many respects. Anyway, moving on. Let's finish off tonight by talking about now. I've got to be careful what I say here because
you've been rehearsing this. Haven't you?
I haven't been rehearsing it, and that's the problem. So how can I put this? So you put out a blog, Stuart.
Yes.
A while back, which kind of I took terrible offence to, even though I don't think there was anything offensive in the blog at all. Rereading it. And
Harry taking offence.
Yeah, I know it's
so out of character.
I know it's crazy. And it was basically, well, what the question is really is, now you've come from a professional photography background, haven't you? So you were a photographer way before you even considered YouTube. And I think that there is a perception, perhaps not necessarily with you, but with some people on Twitter who are photographers rather than YouTubers, who seem to think that maybe YouTube photography is a bit of not a joke, but maybe not as up there as photography. Let's put it that way. How do you feel now? You're now doing YouTube alongside professional photography. Do you have a different perspective on it? Is what I'm trying to get at.
How do I answer this?
Did you prep Stu for this? It's quite
No.
wow.
This isn't going to go well. Tricky one. The first part of what you were saying about sort of perception and all that sort of stuff. I think there is. I think you're onto something there. I don't think that's it. I don't think it would be unreasonable to suggest that people on different platforms have not a positive view, should we say, of a lot of YouTube stuff. But I think that's changing a little bit now, though, because I think from my point of view, going back, I mean, we're going back sort of 3 or 4 years here now, but I think there was a sort of feeling, certainly, and I'm not basing this on anything factual, do you know what I mean? I can only sort of give my opinion, but I think there was perhaps a perception among the sort of more sort of hardcore landscape photographers, should we say, I've been doing it many years or whatever, and I think there was maybe a hope that YouTube was maybe going to be a fad or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And it obviously isn't. I mean, it's the biggest platform out there really for anything, just for photography. So I think it's one of those things where people are now having to sort of adapt to it and get on board with it, because whether it's landscape photography or collecting stamps or whatever it is, it's, if you're trying to sort of reach a wide audience for a relatively small amount of sort of cost, if you like, YouTube's kind of the platform to sort of use, if you like, or certainly if you're doing it professionally anyway. If you're not even considering using YouTube, then I'd probably say you're a bit negligent. But yeah, I think that attitude probably did exist, but is starting to sort of change a little bit, I would say. From my own perspective, I mean, the blog that you're referring to, I was looking at that the other day, actually. Can't believe it's nearly a couple of years old, that.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know where the time's gone. From my own perspective, I mean, I think I was at pains to point out in that blog that certainly the bit that I wrote about YouTube, because, you know, it must be stressed that the part that I wrote about YouTube was part of a much wider sort of blog addressing a number of other things. But yeah, from my own perspective, I mean, I was at pains to point out that I've got respect for anyone who can sort of go out there and spend a lot of time putting a well-crafted video together and put across something that's, you know, entertaining and appealing, because it's a difficult thing, you know, and having now doing it myself, you know, it's really brought that home to me. I mean, I imagined it to be difficult, but doing it in practice, it's very difficult. And when you're trying to sort of juggle all them balls out in the field, as well as obviously take the picture, you know, it's a tough ask. I think the overriding sort of thing I was trying to get across in that little bit that I was talking about YouTube was that there's a big difference between good photography and good videography, if you see what I mean. And I do think, certainly at the time when I wrote it anyway, and I still think this is to be true a little bit, because I know you guys have covered a lot of this stuff actually in a lot of your podcasts anyway, some of these things. But yeah, good. The line is getting, or has certainly been in the past, it does get a little bit blurred. And the sort of angle I was coming at it from is that, because with running this gallery and running the amount of workshops that I do, I'm in something of a unique position in that I get to interact with a lot of photographers on a daily basis, because they come through the gallery or they're on workshops or whatever, and I hear the same conversations over and over again around YouTube and about vlogging and stuff like that. And my worry a little bit is that some of the stuff that I see getting put out there, specifically by people that are sort of trying to come across as an authority on landscape photography and have sort of, you know, I've been there and done it sort of thing, when I was actually really sort of drilling down and looking at the sort of quality of the images being produced and the quality of the portfolios, sometimes it just didn't match up, and that's just, you know, me being honest. But I think that's something that I think, certainly since I wrote that blog, I've seen an awful lot of other people discussing that, you know, people do get a little bit sick of seeing all this stuff getting put out from the perspective of, I know what I'm talking about, you know, this is how you do it. And then you see the picture and you think, well, do you know how to do it? You know what I mean? But that was kind of where I'm coming from. But as far as my own perspective on sort of putting videos together, I mean, you know yourself, lads, it's a tough thing to do.
I think you're spot. I think you're spot on, and I think the problem is that if you're on, say, Twitter, your photography is your mark, is your benchmark, it's what you're known for if you're a photographer, and people will look at your photographs on Twitter and they will make a judgment from that. If you're on YouTube, often if you're a good communicator and you're a bit of a bullshitter, let's say, for instance, then often it's your personality that people look at and not your photography. You win or lose on Twitter as a photographer with your pictures. That's it. You can't come onto Twitter and go, oh, look at me, I'm an amazing photographer, here's a picture, and it's rubbish. But in some instances you can on YouTube. Some people can, because they can sell the lie and they can say, look at this. And that's where the difference is. But I think you're right that the gap is closing, and there are a lot more now Twitter photographers who have more respect for YouTubers as a whole.
I mean, it's not just Twitter. I mean, the thing with YouTube is it's, you know, if you're a YouTuber and you spend all your sort of photography experience within YouTube, then you're obviously going to look at it from a a YouTube-centric sort of perspective. But YouTube, in that sense, isn't any different to any other social media platform, and people get very sort of, I don't know what's the best word, sort of siloed into a platform, if you like, and they only sort of see through that perspective. I won't be, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh coming from this angle, because people watching YouTube videos aren't necessarily watching a landscape photography vlog because they want to see the absolute pinnacle in landscape photography. They might tune in because they just like the personality of the person putting the video out. They might be tuning in because they just want to see a nice, you know, they might like all the B-roll of the landscape, you know what I mean? So it's, people are getting different things from it. But I guess the sort of point I was trying to make in that blog is that my only worry, coming from a sort of professional standpoint, in that, you know, as someone who is constantly running workshops with people, is that I do see from time to time people come on workshops and they'll say, oh, you know, did you see such and such picture on YouTube? And I do kind of worry sometimes that that's where the standard's being pitched a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
When there's a whole world of photography out there beyond YouTube that people aren't perhaps seeing, if you know what I mean.
Do you not think, though, Stu, that it's up to the better photography to realise that YouTube is now the platform to be on, isn't it, for exposure?
And that's what I'm saying, That's what I'm saying.
I understand that some photographers, they can't present themselves in the camera. They find it really difficult being in front of the camera. It's not dealing with itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can be the best photographer out there, but if you're a total introvert and you haven't got that charisma, or, I mean, I'm not saying I have or, you know, anyone else has, but if you haven't got that personality to come across in the video, then it'll fall flat on its face. But I mean, the one thing that I guess, even though landscape photography on YouTube has sort of taken off in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I suppose, it should be remembered that if you were to take a straw sort of cross-section of landscape photographers, it's still a very small minority of landscape photographers that vlog versus landscape photographers that don't vlog. Do you know what I mean? So it is, even though there's a lot more landscape photographers on here, it's still quite a small pool on YouTube.
You're absolutely right, and I think you make a good point. One thing that I would agree with you in terms of concern is that when I'm working with people, as I do from time to time, and I always make a point, and I've mentioned it on this show before, that I ask people what their influences and inspirations are. And it always worries me when they'll just reel off 3 or 4 YouTubers and no, you know, real sort of diamond class photographers that have never been anywhere near YouTube. Yeah. And I think that's a concern, that people think that YouTube is the benchmark, and it isn't even close to the benchmark.
No, and that's not to say that there aren't some exceptional photographers on here, because there are. And I think in that blog, I did kind of point that out. You know, it's not to say that all vloggers are crap and all that. It's not what I was saying at all. But just, it does worry me a little bit, like you're saying there, that people sort of get. And it's not just YouTube, you know, it's the same with Instagram as well. You get people that are very tunnel vision about Instagram and they only experience photography through Instagram. You know, you just want people to just sort of broaden their horizons a little bit. But it's a tough one, because, I mean, YouTube's such a big platform now, and it's so accessible for everyone. And, I mean, you know yourselves, you know, you can sit there just past 2 hours easily just browsing through YouTube.
Yeah, you certainly have. You have to work harder to go out and find good quality photography elsewhere. That, you know, I mean, I come from starting with photography in the 70s and having to go to my local library to find photography books to learn about photography. Yeah. And so with that as a background, I don't see everything that, you know, it's great that I've got the entire world on my phone. That's lovely. But you've got to know how to go out and find that information. And people go to YouTube, type in landscape photography, and so that's what it's all about. And actually, no, that's just a thin slice of what it's all about.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, sorry, go on, Gary, you go.
I think the problem is as well is that a lot of there's a number of YouTubers who don't do the do the platform any favours when it comes to landscape photography. And I've said this loads of times before. You have to remember that there are hundreds of photographers out there better than you are who don't vlog, and you have to know your place. And I think the problem is often there are a number of YouTubers who will start telling you this is the way to do this and this is the way to do that, and when you look at it, the quality of their work is way below a lot of hundreds of other people who don't YouTube. And that's when it's almost like, as a YouTuber, you've got a responsibility not to do something that's going to let the other, the masses jump on your back and say all YouTubers are like this. Does that make sense?
I think one of the other problems though with YouTube, and again, it's not really any different to any other platform, it is very heavily influenced by fashions, trends, and at its core a really, really strong algorithm, because you can see, I mean, I haven't really been doing it long. I haven't been out doing it half as long as you guys, but it's blatantly obvious to me what, content gets more views. If lens reviews or 10 ways to shoot with a wide lens, or, there's certain types of videos that you can see people chasing because they know it gets views. And a lot of that falls into the category of sort of tips and tricks and tuition and that sort of thing. And I just think if you're gonna go down that road, you better have a portfolio of images and sort of depth to your work to back that up. I just see a lot of it ringing quite hollow, to be honest. And yeah.
I think you got to remember that we're on the inside looking out of this. As photographers and experienced and I guess qualified to an extent to have a view on whether we think the quality of images is good, bad, or indifferent. But the majority of the audience that are watching these YouTube videos are not. They're just simply interested in either a location or interested in, I've just bought my first DSLR. How the hell do I do landscape photography? Let's look on YouTube and see what comes up. And they might see a good thumbnail that they click on and they enjoy it. And that's what we're creating. We're all YouTube fodder at the end of the day. We're all creating content for YouTube to please the masses and give them something to look at. And they may sometimes get something out of it, and they may sometimes not. So I think we've got a critical view on this, because I think we would sometimes get more emotional about it if we see somebody joining YouTube professing to be an expert in landscape photography and producing crap, putting it bluntly. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing that winds us up. But for Joe Public, they may not think it's crap. They may think, actually, I quite like this guy. He's taking some good images, and
yeah,
you can't. What he's doing.
You can't attach really any blame to the viewer.
No.
Especially if they're a beginner. They're just, like you say, they're just going to put YouTube on and type in, and whatever comes up, and they're going to watch it. The responsibility is with the creator, definitely.
But I think it's like, what James has started to get more into your videography, James, haven't you, more recently? Obviously,
yeah, I'm enjoying it.
And I think that's where it becomes, from a YouTuber, becomes more enjoyable when you're creating not just content that allows you to share your photography, but actually creates something that allows you to invest in videography and develop new skills in that area, and actually create something that you enjoy doing. Because none of us really do this because we don't enjoy it. We do it because we enjoy the experience of getting out. We enjoy creating a vlog. We enjoy doing a videography and pulling it together.
You could just do a vlog and just do a slideshow. Sorry, Jim.
No, absolutely.
Just produce a slideshow.
Yeah. And I think that's where it becomes more enjoyable, when you're using videography to create more skills and make yourself a more experienced, not just as a photographer, but somebody as a creator, to create videos as well as stills, pulling it together and still keeping an audience entertained.
None of us, though, really are, we're not the 7 tips to, improve this or, etc., to improve that. Except I've done a little bit with bird photography. I was bored.
I can't see anything wrong with that.
I agree with you, Darren, and there isn't anything wrong with it as long as the information you're giving is valid. And I think this is the problem. What happens is you get people who are not, like Stuart says, their level of work, their standard of work isn't up there, and they're saying this is how you should take a photo. And that's the problem. There's people, it's when someone comes on and says, here's my 5 tips to taking a better landscape shot, and tip number 1 is like use a tripod, and tip number 2 is it doesn't matter if the horizon's off, because that's fine. Tip number 3 is don't worry about your exposure. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be if you're going to instruct people or try to instruct people, you need to have a level of understanding yourself. Otherwise,
I agree with that. No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. If someone's quite new to photography, and then they're trying to make out their, they think, well, perhaps, how can I get some views? Right, perhaps what I'll do a 7 tips, or I'll give you some instructions. I agree that's not the right way to go. But I think if you do know what you're doing with the camera and you want to put out videos that 7 tips, because at the end of the day, them kind of videos, I've always said, like instructional videos is normally where the views are, because there is hundreds or thousands of us that are just doing regular vlogs. Where like I'm talking about myself now. I don't want to group anyone else, but with me, it'll be a story on a location. That's it. I'm not really offering anything other than where I am and how I'm feeling on the day. When there's thousands of people that are doing that, so you've got to give the people what they want, and if they want tuition videos and you know what you're talking about, then I think churn them out.
The problem is the perspective of they're saying this is how it is, rather than saying this is my perspective of what my 5 or 7 tips are.
Yeah,
make your own choice.
There is
the
way that you word it, I think, is very important. Absolutely, yeah.
I think the 2 questions you've got to ask yourself is, do you enjoy making that kind of stuff, and are you adding value? And I mean, if you enjoy making instructional type videos, that's it's fine. But I see a lot of videos where people are clearly putting out this sort of stuff, and you can tell they don't enjoy doing it. Do you know what I mean? It comes across that it's very sort of soulless and stilted and that sort of thing. And I just think if you're not enjoying putting that kind of content out, then why are you doing it in the first place? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. 100%. And like you say, adding value. That's the point.
Yeah.
You've got to do it. And it's got to be worthwhile. You've got to have something to give to someone. We talked about a guy, I don't think he even vlogs anymore. But like literally he was putting up posts on Let's Create or somewhere or another saying, here's my video about whatever, and like it was like 7 tips for great portrait photography, and like tip number 1 was have a camera, and tip number 2 was have someone to take a photo of. And you're like, really? Tip number 3 is turn your camera on. And it was like, what? But these people think that this is the route to go sometimes. It's like, I think the problem is often it's YouTube is seen as a cash cow. How can I make money? I'll just, there's people out there who are not even photographers. I'll say I'm a photographer. That seems to be working at the moment, and I'll give people tips videos. And that for me is just, it's just wrong.
You'd have to be a bit of a numbnut, Gary, won't you, to believe that?
I was
to rewatch it.
But there are people
to watch it.
Yeah, but the point is it doesn't matter.
There's loads of that stuff, though.
Yeah, if there's lots of people out there who don't know anything
I'm gonna
about
have to pull
photography.
my next video now.
Yeah, on-off button.
But if there are lots of people out there who don't know photography, let's say there are people who know how to be. I mean, I used to go to a camera club, and I used to talk to no end of people who say, I don't know how to take my camera off of auto. I can't use manual. And I'm like, it's really easy. But like they were going on workshops, and people were saying I think the workshop was called From Auto to Manual. And when they came, this is enough to do with YouTube, when they came off the workshop, they still didn't know how to take it off of auto. So there were hundreds of people, thousands of people out there.
They went on YouTube.
Yeah, but there were thousands of people out there, though, who don't know how to use a camera. And they want to know how to use a camera. They want to be a photographer. And if you've got the right algorithm, SEO, thumbnail, title, they're going to watch that person first before someone who might know what they're talking about. And there's a lot of people out there who just think money, yeah, photography, yeah.
But the money angle, that ship sailed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just want to say to these people, that ship has sailed a long time ago. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you guys will know. I mean, I think I knocked the advertising on a little while ago, and I mean, it's pittance, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's nothing, is it? Do you know what I mean? So, you know, the idea that you're going to, you know, make money out of it, and any kind of serious money, you know, you just need to park that at the door, really. But yeah.
Unless you're streaming Call of Duty live, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or porn.
Yeah, all that, yeah.
I mean, the instructional kind of thing, certainly for maybe someone in my position who's doing it full time and doing a lot of tuition with people hands on, it would be quite an easy road for me to sort of go down that and start producing that sort of stuff. But, you know, I mean, I look around, there's just so many videos of that sort of stuff, and I just think I'm not.
Yeah, but I think but the cream rises to the top. You see, you know, for me, some of the videos that you've watched here with the printing videos, I've watched them.
Those I feel like I can add some value to that, and that's where I will do that.
But that's what I'm saying. I've watched them videos twice because you was genuinely kind of giving something that I was interested in. I mean, I know printing again is a little bit of a niche market, but some people might just, like, even if they don't print, they might get something out of that video because, you know, it's what you do. But for someone who does print, but I do think that people watch YouTube to learn, and then and then secondly they watch because they kind of enjoy the person or the journey. But I think, you know, if you put it on a scale, it would be learning would be top of the tree by far. And then just kind of watching people take photos is a lot further down the list.
That was the heart of why I wrote that blog, because a lot of people coming into photography, obviously just starting out, very impressionable, and YouTube is the first resource people go to learn, because like you're saying, you know, the majority of videos people want to learn, and there's so much stuff out there that can be confusing, and it's being delivered by, you know, a lot of people that probably shouldn't be doing that sort of stuff, and that's where it's a bit of a tricky area.
I'm not being funny, but it's not difficult though, is it? If you type in, you know, how to turn off auto and go onto manual, and you watch someone's video that's got 76 views and 75 thumbs down, you know, really that's not the video that you want to be taking notice of.
You think?
Do you know what I mean?
The one thing that running this gallery has taught me in the last 3 years: just don't grant anyone common sense. You know what I mean? Even the most. I mean, I haven't had much experience in sort of customer service jobs in the past, but just the most obvious things that you can think of, you think, how can someone think like that? But they'll do the wrong thing, and like you're saying there, you think, oh well, I'll just click on the video that's got the most views or whatever, but you'd be surprised that, you know, people are stupid.
Yeah, a lot of people out there will click on the one that's got the brightest thumbnail. You know. Yeah. Anyway, I think with that, I think we'll call it a day. It's been I mean, we could have talked for another couple of hours here. Let's be honest. It's been fantastic. It's been fantastic having you on, Stuart.
Pleasure.
You make a lot of sense, mate. And
thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a really good conversation, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. Definitely, I think so.
Anytime.
Yeah,
anytime.
Anyway, so
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thank you again to everyone for watching, and we'll see you all next week with another guest. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye bye.